If you didn't have a chance to join us, please visit our AccessUserGroups.org website. You'll see the video there. She actually has a demo of data connectors, which is a technology that the team is considering to use in a next version or soon to be released version of Access. And as a part of that, I started an online petition to let the team know how we'd like to have a native data connector with SQL Server. Raise your hand if you think that would be a great idea, right? Be able to actually go ahead and connect to the SQL Server directly without having to do all DBC drivers or download any additional program just from Access. So I think it's a great cause, and let me see if I can bring this up here real quick. Usually I'm pretty prepared about this stuff, but today I forgot about bringing up the X user voice. And actually, if you go to my, I've brought it up everywhere. And of course, now let me go ahead and see if I can find it real quick. Here we go. Sign in. So if you haven't done so, go to this website. I'll go ahead and give you my link, a link of this, so that you can vote on the initiative and see if we can help me out here in terms of doing this. So let me see, Access Desktop Application. Here we go. And here I'm gonna, there it is. It's number one, 206 votes. I launched this, I want to say a week and a half ago, and already it's got 206 votes. Number one, hot idea. So anybody here, if you guys can give it 1, 2, or 3 votes, which I believe is the maximum, that would be great. I'm going to go ahead and paste that URL here, and please consider voting for it. If you already voted, let me know in the comments if you already did that. But basically, this is something that I believe is long overdue for the Microsoft Access product. I know a lot of you have spent a lot of time developing Access with SQL Server solution. That's why you're here tonight, right? Because you're at the forum. You've heard about it, and I think it's worthwhile to let them know that we got to have this here. So please vote early and often, like we say in Chicago. The other aspect of this is I was at Access DevCon last week, last Saturday, and we had a wonderful turnout there. Great event. It was in English, organized by Carl, and I'm going to give you that URL here as well, so that you can peruse the site. And my topic was how to optimize Access with SQL Server Online. And for the most part, I think people enjoyed my presentation. Although afterwards the feedback was, gosh, I wish it was a little more technical, a little more advanced. And I probably in retrospect should have consulted Don and Carl, and I should have consulted about that and probably bring in a more higher end presentation. But hopefully I'll get another chance next year when he does this. He does a lot of these Access conferences every year. He's got 2 of them in Germany and Austria. And he gets 200 people to attend, but they're in German. So I never had a chance to participate. This is the first time we do it in English. And so we really had a great time there and have some wonderful topics. I tweeted a lot throughout the presentation, some really nice slides. If you go to my Twitter account, those of you who follow me on Twitter probably seen them already. Especially when it comes to some slides that I did from Luke that I thought were pretty interesting. Let me see if I can show up here. Just bear with me a second. I thought there was one particular slide that Luke Chung really for me, and gosh, I tweet a lot. All right, here we go. Let's see. Here we go. So that's me. All right. This was 2 slides. This is one interesting slide Luke had. The advantage of Access. We all know why Access is awesome, but I thought he did a great job of illustrating that there. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then the other one was a cost of each database solution compared to Access. I thought this one really brought it home for me in terms of Access simple multi-user or Access Department 50,000 versus SAP 10 million. And who of us have not heard horror stories about SAP and Oracle going beyond budget, spending millions of dollars more than what they thought? And at the end of the day, honestly, those solutions leave a lot to be desired for some departments. It's never something where everybody's 100% happy with the ERP solution. I know it because I've implemented a few in my lifetime. So, being able to create a custom access solution that fits you 90% of the time versus a ERP solution that costs you millions that only helps you with 80% of your needs. I thought it was an interesting slide. So take a look at that. If you want to see those slides, you can. This is my Twitter account. Let me put it in there for you. And afterwards, I had a chance to stay around Vienna and visit Prague, Czech Republic. Then went on to Romania and see Transylvania, parts of Transylvania. Just got back last night. So if you hear me slur a little bit towards the end of the presentation, it's probably because I'm still dealing with jet lag. And so it was a great experience for me to meet other people. But doing that presentation, I mentioned a technique about spawning forms. And afterwards, several people came up to me and says, "Hey, I'd be interested in learning more about spawning. And what is spawning, right?" And so I said, you know what, maybe this would be a great topic. And I had a demo, I created a demo software, which you're going to see during this presentation. I thought it'd be a great topic. So I said, well, let's go ahead and talk about that during this meeting. And so who among you have never had the illusion or the need to be able to display multiple records in your database, right? So, for example, this is a typical database that we use to demo when we get new leads at the office here at IT Impact. Right, you have this open order queue. So if I open this order, 13-2223, and I go back to open order queue and click another order, it's just the same form, but it reorients us to that other record, right? Well, what if I can just continue spawning this order form over and over again so I can display multiple orders? So that's what spawning is about. That's a term I came up with. Some people may call it form cloning. If you have another technical term for it, let me know in the comments or later on during the Q&A. Now, you could, in theory, create multiple copies of the same form, right? So if you have a form called FRM order, you can say, well, I'll just create FRM order 1, FRM 2, FRM 3, and then when I'll just launch each one individually, right? And then when I need to go ahead and if I make a change to the original, I'll just copy it, But now we're talking about maintenance, where you have to remember to update all the other copies of the form, and then you're loading your front end, and then it becomes more hassle for you. With this technique I'm showing you today, you don't have those hassles. It really, all it does is just copies the form in memory. All right, so in order to do this, there are two aspects of it. There's a collection to store objects in a class, and then there is the create copies of the class in memory. And what that means is every form is a class in your database, right? If you look at your database here and go into Control G, right? And this is, of course, Access 101, and for some reason it's not working for me. Let me see. Control G. Let me bring up my other demo database. Control G. There we go. So you'll notice that if I go into the Microsoft Access Objects, all the forms start with form underscore. Well, what is that? What does that mean? Why does it start with form underscore? Form underscore is a class for FRM main menu, right? So that's a class. And FRM form spawn is a class. So every time you create a form, you're creating a new class in your database, right? A more specialized class from the form class, right? So there's a form class. If when you do, for example, !forms.count, what you're using a forms collection, and that collection has two forms open right now. You see two, number 2 come back. And every form is its own class. just like every button on the form has its own class. So for example, I could use a similar technique to copy this button across the form in runtime and say, okay, this is a class. Let me copy that class and create different create different copies of that form, right? So lots of techniques that can be used with the form class that you can extend what you're going to learn about today. If you have questions throughout the presentation, just put in the comments there and I'll try to answer them. So what you end up doing is you end up launching the first form or the master form into memory, and I hide it, and I'll explain why in a second. And then users will spawn a copy of that form, right? So if you got the order form, and I want to bring up another order like I showed you with that demo I did right here, or it doesn't open another class instance of the class, it just opens the same one and reorient it. But here, this is the demo database that you're going to get at the end of the presentation. I've already loaded the form in memory. It's hidden. That's why, although you see main screen here, if you look at my code and I do the forms count, I get a number 2, right? Because I have a hidden form there. So let me just do this. There you go. Now you can see the code and my application at the same time. And so one of the things that I'll do is I'll go ahead and spawn the first copy. So this is a copy of the original in memory, 7055. Could be the order number, right? Could be order number, invoice number, client, whatever you want to use it. And now from here, I'm also spawning another form, or I can, which I just did, or I can go back to the main menu, and there might be like a queue, like I have queue of orders here. In my original demo database, I have a queue of orders, but from here I can spawn that form. So here I can spawn it from here as well. And I can spawn literally as many as I want as memory allows for. Right, so this is a relatively lightweight form. It's not going to take a lot of memory, but as you can see, eventually it'll time out or cause errors, because if I spawn 100 of these, I know it just will be more problematic. All right, so let's see what else here. The advantage of this, right? You usually don't get to see the code. That's not an advantage here. If I show you, if I go back, and again, you're going to get this, so you don't have to worry about making notes here. If I show the original first form here, right, this is the form. This is the original form I spawned from. I can right-click and I can select design views. Notice that design view is available. But if I go to a spawn form of that form, design view is not available. Right, because it's a copy of the class, and therefore there's no design option. So if you were to load the form and hide it like I did with this form here, you cannot edit the other ones in design view. So it gives you another element of security protecting your code. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of this. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I do when I first launch the system. So I'm going to right-click, put this in design view, and here I have an on-open event, which I'll display for you here. And all this does is just opens my form spawn, and then I use AC hidden as the option here. So let me see what option is called. That option is called. The window mode, right? So the window mode is AC hidden, which is a constant, right? So when you see AC hidden, that's an access constant. If I come over here and I ask what is AC hidden, question mark AC hidden is number 1. So I could have just said comma 1, but of course it makes it difficult to see the code, read the code, and so we came up with these constants and we use them. They're part of access, right? It's an access constant. So when I launch this form, it launches into hidden view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the form, the original form here, the form, close the form. And now when I put this form back into form view, right, it'll put it in hidden view again. All right. Now I'm going to show you the code behind spawn form. And that's the spawn form routine here that I have here, spawn form. And then I pass along this random number here. Now this would be your order number, right? Or your invoice number, your estimate number, or your client ID or your client name. And you'll see why it's important that you use a caption property on these forms. Now, I've got 2 forms that are not spawned and then a few other spawns. So what would happen if I did question mark forms.count? What answer do you think I get back? Anybody write in the comments there what answer you think I get back? Would I get number 2 forms, or would I get all the forms that are open along with their spawn? Who says I get 2? Write number 2 there in the comments of Skype if you think I get just 2. Right, I'm going to do question mark forms count. When I press enter, it's going to tell me how many open forms I have. Now, I did this before with the main form and the spawn. I got the count of 2. Are you guys hearing me okay? Okay, good. I find Daniel's typing here. So Daniel thinks it's 2. Who else thinks it's 2? I'm going to add. Anybody else? All right, Jeffrey says 2. That's good. Thank you. At least you're paying attention, darn it. I was hoping I thought maybe I was talking to myself here. All right, so I press enter. I get 10. Now, 10, we know that the first one is FRM main menu. The second one is FRM right here. I got them here, right? The first one, FRM main menu, right? So that one was the first one I launched. The last one I launched was, well, I put them in design view, right? So let me ask if forms 0, right? Which is the first one in that collection, what name it has. FRM main menu. Great. Now, if I say form 1 would be forms 1, that would be the next one in memory, right? FRM spawn, all right. So that's a 2. We know we have those for sure. Well, let's number 3. Let's see what's number 3 say. Form spawn. That's interesting, don't you think? Actually, every one of those spawn forms is going to have the same name. Right? So think about that. Every single one is going to have the same name. So now gone is the ability to be able to do all kinds of great things with the forms collection, right? Because think about it. If you use forms, ban, FR, spawn, the system is going to be like, well, I got 10 of them. Which one are you referring to, right? Right? So if I come here and I say, okay, I'm going to refer this to FRM spawn, right? And what is the, right? So it gives me a name, but which one are we referring to? We lost a reference to that form. So when you use the forms collection on spawn forms, it loses it. So one of the things that we do is we use the caption property. So let's take a look at this procedure. Again, you're going to get a copy of this at the end of the meeting. So no need to make notes. Let's take a look at all the nice things this does when it launches the spawn here. So here, this is a function I created, a public function I created in the module spawn. I also have a class module called CLS spawn. We'll get that in a second. But here, it dimensions a variable of the class CLS spawn, right? So a new one. So every time you instantiate this variable here, because we use new, it creates it immediately in memory, right? We don't use a set CLS later on. It does that, right? So here it has that spawn, and then it creates has a form variable as form. Now it could be that your user, the reason I have this for loop here, it could be that your user is requesting the same order that's already open, right? So for example, if I say, okay, with spawn order number order number 7055, I want you to spawn that. So let's see what happens when I do that. So I'm gonna break it, and I'm going to use spawn form, and I'm going to say spawn form, right? And then it's a caption property, so I gotta do double quote 7055, right? Press enter. So the caption is 7055, and that's the one that I already have open, right? Yeah, it's right here. And now I must walk through the procedure. So it's going to see if it can find it in that collection. And it did. So the caption property equals the variable I passed. Now it's going to say set focus, right? F8. And then it's going to exit out the function because we don't want to spawn the same form again, right? That might cause issues with record locks and so forth. So it won't do that. Now, if I do spawn, let's just do spawn 9999, right? So order number 999. In this case, we don't have a database of order, so just create the application. It's going to go through that whole for loop through all the forms, right? It's looping through them. It's not going to find it. All right. This temp_bars.add launching form. This is something I do a lot when I have forms. They have subforms. I wrote a blog article about it. It's called Deja Vu. If you search, do a Google search Deja Vu against the AccessExperts.com website, you'll see that you would think that when the form is launched, the main form open event fires off. No, it doesn't. It's the subforms. So I add this temp bars here. So let the subforms know, hey, we're launching the form. Don't do anything until the main form's load event executes, and then you're allowed to, when this is set to false, then you're allowed to do your processing. Now we have a caption property called a caption property here at the class level. So let's go through that. So here it initializes the class. In initializing the class, we have a reference of this form as new form FRM spawn, right? So here I make it visible, right? And so I'm going to press F8. Now if I come over here in the front end, I got my form here that's visible. And then the class ID, this class ID is initialized. And then the caption is this class ID. This okay, a little optimized. And I exit out. So that's just an installation. Basically, it's just setting the form to visible here. Now go back. Now I'm going to execute the create form method of the class. And this create form method, visible true again. Class initialize. Again, this could be a further optimized. And I do exit function. Okay. Now I got var class ID. Well, var class ID is a string, as you can see here, and I create this key here, and that goes as a key _9, and then I set the var class ID, and then I have a property of the class ID on CLS spawn, right? CLS spawn class ID, as you see at the top, and I assign the value to that, and then do that, and then I add this class to a collection that I just created, and that collection is going to have a class ID of key 9. And by doing that, there's a major problem with this technique, and that is in the past, if you didn't use a collection, by shutting down the original form, you would lose all the spawn forms. So by just simply doing this, assigning the class to a collection, that means a collection that takes possession of that object. And if you close the main object or the mother of all the children, it won't close all the children. So that's one of the major advantages of using this method. And then it sets the class to nothing. Notice that now we don't have anything instantiated, right? And that's it. So there you go. I got my 999 there, right? So it's created a copy of that in memory. And so the real magic starts when I go to the class. So let me go to the class here. I'll show you this. So I've got the initialization class, right? So now what happens is that this class gets initialized when I say this form diaphragm visible true. Because it says new, right? New here, the new keyword is going to immediately create that object in memory of the form FRM spawn, right? So it's an early binding of this form that's loaded in memory. So this single line, by having this FRM here and then using it here in the class initialization, is what creates that copy, right, of the form. And then we assign it to a collection, and then the collection itself is managed here by adding it to the collection, right? And we saw that code earlier today. Let me just see. So, but this handles just the collection part. If I go to spawn, that's where it adds it to the collection here, right? So it's pretty simple code. So there's several things you need to take advantage of. Let me show you the original. First of all, you want to have a class ID of the form itself, right? So right now I have, if I do forms.count, I press enter, I got 11, right? So that means the last one was created was 10. So I'm going to say, okay, forms, right, 10 dot class ID. Now this may or may not work because I have to use the form dot. No, it did work. Okay, so notice that there is a key 9, and I can use the caption property as well. Right? It's easier for me. There, I need to probably do forms. Let me go ahead and put form dot, well, forms dot caption. I can't remember. It was forms dot caption. Let me see. I think it's form. There's something wrong. Let's see here. Class ID. No, we got class ID. That's why. All right. So the caption is the order number 9999. And I'd rather use the caption property instead of the class ID because it's easy for me to know exactly what the person wanted, right? So I can just filter, go through all the forms and say, okay, if I'm looking, is that order already open? I just check out the class. I probably could have optimized the code further and use the order number for the class ID, but in this case I didn't. Now, all of this came from an article I read on the web, and there's a reference to that here in here. So if you want to see the original article I use for this, you can go to this URL. It's already in the code, but I thought I'd put it in there for you. You can go there and then see how to use collection to manage. This is Access 97. Wow, talk about blast from the past. So that's what the original article I used. The original article was pretty basic. The code does work. I modified the code, but I added some additional things there in order to be able to find the form that I spawned right with the form collection in the while loop. And that's pretty much it.
Results from a search.
That's pretty much it. That's pretty much my presentation. We'll go ahead and open this up. And if you have a question, suggestion, tip, or comment, go ahead and unmute yourself and let me know. Did you guys like what I showed you?
Yes.
Great. All right. People are rather commenting. Now, who's used this concept before, spawning forms? So is spawning something that you use? Have you heard that term spawning, or is it another term for referencing this? Who's used spawning before, or have you heard it referred to as something else? Anybody used spawning before? All right. Thank you, Jeffrey, so much for that. Appreciate it. Oh, okay. Daniel, you've heard this is before. Okay. Barbara, it's new to you. That's good. I'm glad you understand. Now, Daniel, when you've used it, what did you use it for? Was it to display multiple orders or invoices? You can also unmute yourself if you want to have a conversation with me here live. Okay, so you use it for cleaning up context. Okay, great. I think I'm echoing because somebody has their mic open and it's copying over me. We have 11 people in the meeting. Thank you so much for everybody showing up. Now, what's really interesting to me is how simple it is once I read the article and implemented it, and how powerful it is. Now, I don't know if you've ever had clients who've done this, but the other day I was visiting a client in Denver, and I'm walking through the office, and this is the kind of client that has 2 monitors per employee. It doesn't happen all the time, but I do walk across companies that offer 2 monitors to each employee. And I noticed that these employees were running the front end twice on their computer, one on one monitor and the front end on the other monitor. So they had 2 front ends. And I knew it was supported. I personally think if it works fine for you and you don't have any error messages, great. Otherwise, it can lead to some issues, right? With this technique of spawning forms, you don't necessarily then have to have the front end twice, right? In other words, you can just use the spawning technique to pull up information together. All right, so a couple of things. Let me just show you some additional things regarding this technique. If I hit the close form, right, it's going to close that. And let me show you how the close form works. Because it's not just do command that close, because, okay, when you do command that close, it wants to know what form you're going to close, right? So I just want to make sure we cover that. When I say, okay, do command, right, do command that close, right? Okay, and say AC form, right? And then it wants to know, okay, which one you want me to close. Well, I can't use FRM spawn, because if I use that, in fact, let me just try it now. It might close all of them, right? Or it may come back with an error message, which one you're talking about. So let me just go ahead and do that. Okay, that worked. Let's see what happens. Where it closed one of them, right? Didn't close all of them, close one of them. Probably the one that I had focused on at that point. So if I go ahead and come in here, let me go ahead and do it this way. So the results can be unpredictable when you do it this way. There, see this? It's closing the last one in the collection. You really do want to avoid that, right? You want to know exactly which one to close, not just the last one there. Now let me see here. So I want to show you that code for closing, and that is unload, right? So here I've got the unload form unload. Let me just look at the original form spawn here. View object, and let me show the first form. All right, and design view, and let's take a look at the code behind that close, right? Build event. All right. So all it's doing here is it's closing object type, object name. All right, so it's just closing, right? But when it closes, it kicks off this code here. So I want to show you this code, because what ends up happening is when you unload is that you need to remove it from the collection. See that? You remove it from the collection. So it does some collection maintenance here. It says, okay, if not, is no this class ID. I did this for the original form, because if I wanted to close the original form, it's not going to have a class ID. And I just remove it from the collection. Right now, if I right click on this collection variable, this collection variable is defined in the public module up here at the top. So this collection is always going to be present when you launch the application, right? And then you're just adding members or removing members. Now, keep in mind that I never tried this, but if you were to have this technique across multiple forms in your database, so for example, if you have an FRM order, you may have an FRM invoice, right? So you may consider creating just a collection for invoices, a collection for orders, instead of just having one master collection, or just use the same collection for all of them. I don't think there's any right answer either way, but to make it more clear in your code, you may want to create a collection just for orders or invoices. Oh, this is interesting. See, this is the problem I told you about earlier. I had some instances that were spawned, and now they all closed at some point. So that's why we like to hide this one, right? Because if I put in design view, it may do this. Let me just try this one more time. I'm going to see if okay. Let's see if this works. I don't have it hidden anymore. Okay, that worked. Okay, good. Spawn form. All right. Let me just remove this breakpoint. All right. So now I've got several instances I open. Okay. Now I go back here. I show my form. It's not doing that because it's hidden. So I know I had several when I put in. Close it, not save it. Launch it again. Spawning forms. All right, so spawn. I got spawn. Then I show the first form. And put in design view. See, they're all gone. See that? And you don't want that to happen. So when I let me just launch this again. So I'm gonna launch it. This time it won't be hidden. And then if I spawn it, spawn. I got these spawns, right? Then if I just close this form, let's see, close the form, but the spawns. So if you put in design view, the other elements fall away. Yeah, spawn for instance. So that's why I always recommend that you hide it. And of course, when you hide the form, you want to implement the where clause where 1 equals 0, which is a technique that Armin Stein, I credit to Armin Stein, he's got a blog where he explains that. And therefore, it doesn't load any data. It does not hog any locks on your database or anything like that. All right. That's pretty much it. Any other comments you guys have? Any questions? You guys like the well, you already told me you like the topic, so I appreciate that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the link where you can download this. And that's going to be here. Let's see. Nope, let me launch it again from my Slack. We use Slack here, IT Impact. And I had Alex on my team here. So you just go to this URL, spawning forms download. It's going to ask you your password. I'm going to give that to you now. Then the password is AUG SQL all uppercase. And go ahead and download it today, because come Friday it's going to be before we publish this video, I'm going to ask Alex to make sure he takes it down, because I wanted this to be something special for the people who show up. When I do these things, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'll just view the recording." Well, this time, because you didn't show up, now you don't have access to the spawning demo right until later on this year when I publish it later on this year. So just a little thank you on my end to doing it. I have one more thing I want to talk about next month's topic, but before I do, any last questions you guys have? I see Jeffrey's typing something there. And if you guys can try downloading it now, make sure it's working. Okay, good, Jeffrey, thanks. So here, a couple things. First of all, I wanted to wrap up my presentation. Great, thanks for letting me know it works. If you like what you heard about today, please tweet about it. That's your way of saying. A lot of people come to me afterwards and say, "Well, how can I thank you for all the stuff you do?" Tweet about it, LinkedIn about it. Go into LinkedIn, go into my AccessUserGroups server group, and leave a comment. I'm hoping it's a great comment, but leave any comment, and then they'll tell everybody else who missed it how awesome it was, and they wish they would have done it. If you have a blog about it, that'd be great. Blog about it, Facebook about it. Get the word out that you love the presentation or did not love it, whatever your comment is. I'm not going to say don't leave a comment, but I'm hoping that you guys did like it, like you told me. And just make everybody envious. The other thing is we are hiring. We're looking for a senior .NET developer and a manager in my firm. So if you can, if you know of a good project manager, then please run my way. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is the topic for next month. And this came up in my Vienna presentation. I started talking about security. Let's say, for example, you have a database of social security numbers, right? And there's a column. So let's say, for example, you have an employee table. And one of the columns is social security number. Well, I would never store that in Access backend. I just wouldn't. I think it's just too problematic. Opens you up to too many issues. And when I run across that with my clients, I immediately write them a nice letter from me saying, as your consultant, I advise you to migrate that data to SQL Server backend. Doesn't have to be any backend, and it doesn't have to be local or in the cloud, but as long as it's in SQL Server, right? Furthermore, what we do at IT Impact is I break that column out into its own table, right? So say, for example, I got the employee table. Of course, the key is going to be employee ID. So I create a new table, right? TBL. I wouldn't make it so obvious as social security number, but something in SN maybe. And then the key is going to be employee ID, and then I'll have another column on there for the social security number, and that column would be encrypted at SQL Server. Now, if you don't know this, you're going to find this out today. Anytime you have or use Azure, the connection between Access and Azure is encrypted, and Azure will reject any unencrypted connections. Right? So if that's just the way set up, and that's how we always set up when we do that's not Azure related, we always enable encryption and communication, and they'll reject the client. So that avoids a man-in-the-middle attack, where somebody can sniff out packets, and because it's encrypted with SQL Azure and the client is good. The other aspect of this is when you encrypt a column in SQL Server, you're using what? Does anybody know what you use when you encrypt a column in SQL Server? How do you encrypt a column in SQL Server using what? Anybody? A certificate. You use a certificate. Now you can create your own certificates. You can buy certificates. But you create a certificate, and that certificate, how to manage that certificate, where to put that certificate, is going to be the topic of my conversation next month. So if you are interested in this topic, how to secure data, sensitive data like credit card numbers, social security numbers, right? Birthday dates, anything you want, you really want to attend next month's session where we're going to talk about, we're going to do a deep dive on security and how to implement that security model with Access. Does that sound interesting? Do you guys think that would be a good topic for next month? Can I hear a yay or nay in the comments? Would you guys like to see that? Have you ever come across instances where you have sensitive information and you wish you would have predicted that in SQL Server? Have you ever come across that? Where you came across when somebody has some encrypted communication in their back end? All right, Daniel's saying yes. Thank you. Yeah, credit cards. That's a big one. I had a client of mine who was storing credit cards, for years. Of course, after a couple of years, the credit card information is invalid, but I still would say, why do you need a whole number? And I got finally convinced her just to store the last 4 digits of the credit card in the database. But yeah, I can see where credit card issue. So we're going to talk about deep dive on security information, including the recent happenings with the SQL Service losing a briefcase. You guys remember that with the SQL Service? Lost a briefcase and it was encrypted laptop. And even before that, there was an instance of somebody downloading social security numbers to Excel and the laptop got stolen. How would you avoid that? So we're going to talk about that as well next month. How do you avoid those kind of issues where data leaks, right, going out there? Now, I don't pretend to be a security expert by no means, but security is kind of a fascinating topic for me. And so I try to use security context. Now, remind me to tell you a story next month about how I won a proposal. I was competing with 2 other companies and why I won that. So remind me about that, to tell you about that example. One last thing before you go is I'm going to be in Spain the week of May 27th, the day of May 27th, Saturday, May 27th. I'll be in Spain, and that's the Descubra el poder de sus datos.com. I'll be doing it in Spanish. If you know anybody in Spain or colleagues or anything like that, please also tweet about it. I'll be at this event. Registration is the discount for registration is the last day of April. So if you know of anybody there. And the other thing is I'll be talking at SQL Saturday, New York, Manhattan. I'll be in Manhattan. SQL Saturday, Manhattan. Let me bring that up. That's going to be later on in May. SQL Saturday in New York. And let me just quickly bring that up. So New York City 2015 now. New York 2017. So I urge you to sign up. And that's not going to be a technical session. That's actually going to be talking about money. How to make money, how to get money. So if you're in the New York area, please come out and join us. The SQL Saturday events are free. Or have a nominal charge, $5 to $10 for the launch. It's going to be actually in the Microsoft offices at Times Square. I was there several weeks ago when it was quite cold, and this one's going to be hopefully be a little bit warmer because we're on May 20. If Linda, Owen, I know is in the area, hopefully Linda will join me. And usually you have multiple tracks, multiple speakers. I submitted a session, how to start your own consulting practice, how to get customers, how to retain them, how to quote them. It's an interesting chat. It's about money, making money, lots of it. So if you're interested in that, yeah, it's May 27th. So hopefully you can join me that day, Saturday at the Microsoft. Actually, those Linda, if you can, Linda Owen, who's on the call with me today, she's actually the Access User Group president for New York. And that's the offices that they meet at in Times Square. So if you're ever in New York, Linda, what days of the month are you doing your meetings there in New York? First Monday of every month, except July and August. So if you're in New York, if you're ever there for the first Monday, which, I go to New York quite often, but I never get the chance to present at this meeting. So I think I owe Linda at least once, maybe September, October. We can, and then, is there a user group in Australia? Well, Ben, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I'm actually looking for somebody to step up to the plate and start a user group in Australia for AccessUserGroups.org. So if you are really interested, please let me know if you're interested in becoming there. And so your connection says, okay. So if you want to, please reach out to me at through my email, which is Jace Ottawa at itimpact.com. Let's talk, man. We'll help you promote it, help you get the group going, provide you with topic speakers, and it does help you become an Access MVP. We'd love to see you actually become an Access MVP. All right, so that's pretty much it for me tonight. And I'm actually calling you from the parking lot of the Hampton Inn because I'm on my way to see a client tomorrow in Detroit. And I didn't want to pass up this opportunity to give you guys a great topic such as spawning forms. Go out there, spawn those forms, literally your Access databases with more forms. And let me know later on this year if you end up using the code and how you use it. Get back to me if you find any bugs. If you ever have any issues using my code. And, I thank you once again from the bottom of my heart. We do this, Lucy and I do this for the love of Access. So I appreciate each one of you guys coming out here at dinner time. Some of you joining us from other continents even. And I appreciate that. And if you join us from another continent like Australia, I know it can be quite early or quite late, so I appreciate that. And so long, folks. That's a wrap. Thank you very much for being with us.